Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving. So I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. Grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win, yeah. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Keep my head up when I act, head up, that's a fact. Never looking back, I'ma keep myself on track. Keep my head up, staying strong, always moving on. Feel I don't belong, tell my thoughts to move along. Push myself to be the best, die with no regrets. Live with every breath, see my message start to spread. And I had so many dreams, then you hit your teens. Life ain't really what it seems, try to find out what it means. Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just wanna keep moving. Yeah, I put out all this art, it's my only medicine. Yeah, everything I do, I'm just being genuine. Yeah, I'm sick of being screwed, feel my own adrenaline. Yeah, I do just what I do, and I hope you let me in, yeah. I'm grateful, oh yeah, able, oh yeah, I'm stable, oh yeah, no label, oh yeah, you know me, I have only a path, I'm lonely, but damn, I'm going to win. I don't want no fake love, I want the real stuff. Everybody listen up, cause I'll only say it once. I'm gonna show you all the path, if you want it bad. I'm gonna show you where it's at, yeah, how you can get it back. Yeah, cause I ain't never done, I'll be number one.
Bingo! What's up, everybody? Happy Saturday morning. So I'll start off just kind of addressing some questions that have come through recently as we filter people in here. I got a question recently about hematocrit and TRT and what can you do besides blood donation to lower hematocrit? What the research says about this, for those curious, is that if you consume either a half or a full grapefruit, I'm not even really sure that there's a duration of time, but I would probably suggest every other day, possibly even every day. I mean, look, you're going to get some fiber, you're going to get some nutrients. I think you get like 10% of your potassium. You get some other nutrients in it. Then you will, over time, slowly lower hematocrit. Now, interestingly, there's actually people on Reddit that have done this and reported 2 to 3 point differences in under a week. And importantly, alleviation of their symptoms of high hematocrit on TRT, which is like head pressure usually, maybe a little shortness of breath, generally kind of feeling unwell, maybe some excessive sweating, and that's kind of the gist of it. So a grapefruit a day or a grapefruit every other day would probably be the best route for that. Now, one of the chemicals in grapefruit, it's called like tarnogin or something to this effect. I'm definitely butchering it. That stuff you can get in supplemental form, and that should be able to lower hematocrit. Otherwise, you'd be looking at a therapeutic phlebotomy, which almost definitely will lower both RBC and hematocrit pretty quickly. And as long as you're monitoring ferritin levels and you're making sure they don't go below range, then that's really the strategy for said people. So far on TRT, I've not had to donate. My hematocrit has stayed in range. Lately, though, it's at 49, which is 1 unit or so below the top of the reference range. So if it gets like 50, 51, I'm probably going to start just eating some grapefruits or taking some of that extract that comes from grapefruits to deal with it. And then I'll just kind of go from there. That's just the bottom line. Next question was, can I take 9-MeO-BC with bromontane? So this is kind of a common question that comes up. I think people just want to experiment and be doing, multiple things at once to try to aid in fixing dopamine or restoring the dopaminergic transmission system. The answer to that question is yes. I've seen it done before. So you can do that. You can dose 9-MeO-BC and bromontane at the same time. It didn't come with ill effects in the few people that I have monitored and suggested that they take that. These were cases, however, where long-term Vyvanse or long-term Adderall abuse, not just use, but abuse, in the 20 to 30 plus milligrams a day, slow acting, or like 20 milligrams immediate release, people were using that much Adderall. And so over time, like I've had people come to me using a lot of Adderall that have dopamine dysfunction. And, we characterize that or we can define that as a lack of libido, but also present is a strong sense of anhedonia, just a lack of joy for music, for physical things that make you feel good, like touch. Anhedonia is a real weird state to be in because it can take the pleasure out of life, out of your life. It's very, very crazy. But nonetheless, in these people, there's a very particular dude that I did long consulting with where we got him so much healthier and so much more functional than when he came to me. Had been using Adderall for 8 years. He built this big construction company in Vegas using it. And that's no surprise. I mean, the stuff's going to crank up dopamine, in the synaptic spaces, make you very energized and make you productive. But it eventually burned him out. And he had anhedonia, libido issues. He was generally unwell, unhappy. And so 9-MeO-BC and bromontane in that particular case worked. It worked very well, not only for providing the dopamine kind of function while he was not taking Adderall and in that state, like immediate kind of dopaminergic energy, which was very useful for this guy. But we think long-term, this was restoring dopaminergic transmission, which using 9-MeO-BC should be able to do. Okay, so that's the second question that I got via email that I figured I'd start the live stream on. Third question is, why is it frowned upon generally to start TRT at 200 milligrams a week? Why is it frowned upon generally? And the answer to that question is, it is only frowned upon to do that, to start at like 200 milligrams a week on the internet. It's not frowned upon, in the real world of men using TRT. In fact, it is the starter dose, right? It is the dose that most people start with when using testosterone replacement therapy, right? So I think this testosterone replacement can definitely have side effects. Definitely, and some of it isn't exclusively estradiol. Some of it's just too high androgens, too high DHT. You can be overstimulated. You got the sympathetic nervous system drive where you feel like you fucking drank 5 cups of coffee and maybe took some theobromine, and that doesn't feel good. And so lowering androgens by just lowering the dose helps people in these cases while still maintaining all of the benefits that they get on TRT. Okay, this is absolutely positively possible. So I think that's why high doses of TRT, or at least 200 milligrams to start, is frowned upon. Secondly, though, that's almost definitely, depending on your body fat and booze consumption and whatever lifestyle, going to elevate estradiol further than I think most people are going to physically feel comfortable with, and that their erections are going to like. So, the lower the doses you go on testosterone, the lower estradiol ultimately you're going to be creating. And so that is another reason that happens. But let it be known that generally speaking, 200 milligrams is actually a great starter dose for people. And, I think the minimum frequency, or really the max frequency, should be every other day. And that's 60 milligrams a day or 55 milligrams, whatever that is. And that's kind of usually adequate for sexual function on TRT. And again, more people are going to have a better experience in terms of sexual function doing less frequent injections. So, all right, so we got a couple questions, so I'll get to them in the meantime. I just figured I'd start off with I get emails every day with questions and I can't get to them all. I don't have the time. So starting off the live streams, answering those questions, I figured might be useful. Turner Naylor says, can we alternate between Concerta and Moda twice a week? You'd have to check with your doc on that, but I don't think that would be a particular issue. Doctors normally don't co-prescribe modafinil with Concerta just because they're both working on the dopamine system. So you just want to talk to doc. Do I really feel like that's going to be a problem? No. I think if it was me, I would just not take Concerta and I would just take modafinil. But maybe you have ADHD, you know what I mean? Diagnosed ADHD, in which case you should probably take whatever your doc suggests, or, you know, go into the scientific research and the anecdotals on the web and try to make a good decision of what might be better for you than, you know, taking the dopaminergic drugs that the medical establishment has to offer. You know, again, I was just talking about at the beginning of this video, taking someone from Adderall abuse and fixing them with 9-MEBC and bromontane, but importantly highlighting how shitty that guy's life was before we got some of the good chemicals in his regimen and he started feeling better. David Finnegan says, I followed your video on taking a break from caffeine. After 2 weeks off, I still have terrible brain fog. What's the best way to negate this? Look, maybe, brother, you need to just get back on caffeine. You know, it's only, like, for me personally, there's just a lot of other things in my regimen that allow me to feel great. Not the least of which is TRT and obviously nootropics, things like nicotine patches. So, you know, I and targeting the same systems, but just without having caffeine in somewhat of a more optimized way with better compounds like teacrine, usually just acts as a better replacement to coffee. Me personally, I feel pretty terrible for 3 days, maybe 4 after quitting caffeine. And then I feel good again. Not great, but good again. And then I can, you know, manipulate how I feel via, you know, other things, nootropics, obviously TRT, which is sort of baseline where it is, which helps me to have energy a lot. Things like nicotine patches, etc. But then, you know, after 7 days onward, I feel great. I haven't drank coffee now for, I don't know, 2-3 months, whenever I did that video about quitting. And I just don't care. I don't intend to bring it back in right now because I feel really good. So, you know, but for you, maybe if it's been weeks and you still feel shitty, you got to get to the bottom of why you're feeling shitty, first of all. But secondarily, maybe just bring the caffeine back. If it wasn't causing you any health problems, you know, or any issues with cognition, I really see no reason to bring it out, to take it out. I just do it to cycle it, because then when I go back on caffeine, the effect is much greater. Thoughts on 500 milligrams phenylalanine, 500 tyrosine, 500 mucuna. I think this is what I think. 30% of people, just an estimation, will tolerate that fine. And they'll be like, have a lot more energy, be motivated, be like increased sex drive, probably better boners, you know, and then 70% of people will not tolerate that, because the combo together is just, yes, you're going to make a lot of dopamine, but then that dopamine via, I think it's dopamine B-hydroxylase, is just going to convert to norepinephrine, which is then going to convert to epinephrine. And those are the fight or flight catecholamines. So it does not feel good. I've induced this state, and I'm sure other people have before too, to have really high levels of the other catecholamines besides dopamine. You feel terrible. You feel like you're in fight or flight all the time. And you have head pressure. It's just not fun to feel that way. And so while some people will deal with that combination, a lot of people won't, because it'll be causing excess norepinephrine. Maybe it'll be great for you. Hopefully you're in that 30%. As far as tests, you know, it's different for different people. I hate to give generalities like regarding TRT, but what seems to be clear is that people on long esters will do better in terms of sexual function if their injections are spread apart. So if their injections are less frequent, unless they do daily injections, and the daily injections are of a significant quantity, 40 milligrams or so, and then you're pushing 280 milligrams a week, you know, so whatever. Ideally on longer esters, minimum every other day, right? But it should be like 50 to 60 milligrams. And people's responses are going to be different in terms of sexual function. But if I run every other day, I've got to do 60 milligrams of a long ester. And that suffices pretty good for sexual function. The acne is worse, but I've recently learned about a simple solution, which, like, it's just kind of mind blowing because it's so simple. And that's Gold Dial soap, the Gold Bar. the antibacterial stuff actually works for acne really, really awesomely. Testosterone propionate, on the other hand, I have a lot of experience with that. I've done well on 40 milligrams every other day, and I've done really well on 25 milligrams every day. Now, the post-injection pain really does hurt. It really does hurt. If you're doing it sub-Q, it hurts worse. I mean, if you can do it intramuscular or shallow IM, it's probably going to hurt a lot less. But then you're poking your muscle every single day, even if it's with a small needle, and I'm not sure I want to do that. The energy effects from propionate are much more pronounced and seem much cleaner. It's like being on the best stimulant ever with no side effects. It's very, very cool. Whereas, high doses of, exceptionally high doses at a time of a longer ester, like, seem to make people feel a little less good, still energetic, etc. But more people than not respond poorly to that, if that makes any sense. Regarding sexual function, I think both, long and short esters are fine, so long as you understand what protocol works better for you. I mean, some people are going to need to inject less frequently on longer esters. Some people can get away with every day. I'm not one of those people. Like, every day cypionate protocol that I've ever been on was not optimized for sexual function. It's fine, but like, not optimized. Every fourth day at 70 or 80 milligrams was great, or every other day at 60 milligrams was great for sexual function on long esters. Whereas with prop, it's just 25 milligrams a day is perfect, honestly. But the PIPs are really getting annoying, so I don't know. We'll see if I decide to change. Any thoughts on experience with phosphatidylserine? Yeah, it lowers cortisol a tad. That's about all I remember it doing. I didn't notice any kind of subjective benefits or subjective difference with it. So that's all I can really say about that. Ryan is asking, what are your thoughts on treating hypothyroidism medically? T4, T3, a combination of both. Look, I mean, synthetic thyroid hormones are not a problem, in my opinion. I mean, they're not terrible, right? And to a degree, as long as you're not pushing excess levels of these medications, I don't really think the thyroid hormones, your innate thyroid hormones, downregulate all that much. Whereas with testosterone, hypothalamus pituitary downregulates substantially. So, I don't really think that it's a huge problem to be taking levothyroxine or whatever, any of the T3, T4 medications, as long as you need it. If you're hypo and you can't do anything about it, like you try taking 200 to 400 micrograms of selenium, 500 milligrams tyrosine a day, and that does nothing for you at all regarding thyroid hormones. That might be the time to talk to a doc, get a second opinion, and see if it makes sense to go on thyroid medication, at which point I think it's completely fine. If you need it, your life is going to be much different having better energy. People that are hypogonadal have testosterone deficiency that are also hypothyroid fix their testosterone deficiency or dramatically aid in it getting better by going on thyroid medication. So that's kind of my take on it. Doesn't mean it isn't without its side effects, because, if your dose is wrong, you're going to go hyperthyroid and you're going to fucking feel terrible. You're going to be sweating and be overly energetic. Your sleep is going to be very terrible. You won't feel good. And there's some other negative side effects associated with that too, which is not good. Ishmael is saying Elevance 50 milligrams for studying. I'm not sure what that is. Is that a brand name for some drug that we already know, like Concerta or whatever, or Vyvanse possibly? Yeah, I mean, those are dopamine reuptake inhibiting drugs, mostly the dopaminergics that come from pharma. And I mean, they're good for studying, but they're bad long term. They're bad for your dopamine system long term. There's just no question about that. I've seen too many dudes come to me after abusing those drugs, and they've got anhedonia, and they have a lack of sexual function. Their libido is, in the shit can. And, they're really asking for help. Eric G saying, on prop and HCG, do you feel like you have to stay in the same range for estrogen? This is a good question. And if overweight but working on it, would you still do prop and HCG? Yes, I would. The thing that I'm noticing with prop related to estradiol is that the same dose of prop, the same dose prop versus cypionate, I would need either microdoses of an AI or pretty high dose calcium D-glucarate on a longer ester. Whereas with prop, I haven't touched. I ran 3.25 milligrams of aromatase, and it ended up kind of muting my libido a little bit, which indicates I didn't really need to fuck with the estradiol at all. My water retention is far less on prop versus Cypionate. And I don't have any sexual negatives so far on running prop, right, at 25 milligrams a day. So, and you're going to find this all across the forums, like many forums of guys taking testosterone propionate and not having estrogenic side effects, in some cases, despite still being over the reference range. Okay. Still being over the reference range. So guys could be at 40 or 50 picograms per milliliter, or as Vigorous Steve would say, picograms per milliliter, but they don't have estrogenic side effects. And my theory on that, I think looking at the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of fast-acting ester, is probably that the estradiol can't saturate tissues very long, and then, test peaks, estradiol will peak to its threshold, because it is a threshold. You won't just aromatize forever, and then, but then it drops, testosterone starts dropping in the evening or the next day if you're running every other day of prop. And then, so estradiol you're just not going to get constant aromatization. Okay. So generally speaking, less aromatization, or less troublesome aromatization, I should say, to be nuanced, possibly elevated estradiol, but at the tissue level, probably less consistent estradiol. And as a result, a lot less water retention and negative side effects from taking prop versus cypionate anything. Doesn't mean longer esters are bad. If you can make them work for you, they're fine. If you can deal with the extra acne from constant androgens and constant DHT, fine. I recently learned about Dial Gold, which is just it's like your grandma's soap, bro. Remember grandma had fucking Dial soap? And that stuff works pretty well anecdotally for acne. Now, when I made the change to prop, my acne got significantly better, but I'm running now Dial Gold soap, just kind of leaving it on for 40 seconds. Like salicylic acid doesn't do shit for acne on TRT. It really just doesn't. I mean, it's not very effective, and it seems to be helping. So, that's the breaks, brother. Marco is asking about Shilajit as a testosterone dopamine booster. Yeah, I think Shilajit, God, from what I remember, it might be optimizing androgen receptors at some very marginal level. Possibly doing something with the D1 or D2 dopamine receptor. I'm not sure. It's helping you synthesize more dopamine. Maybe there's a mechanism for increased tyrosine hydroxylase, which would mean more dopamine conversion from L-DOPA from tyrosine into L-DOPA. But I can't substantiate that, right? So you've got to look into it. It's one of those compounds I really haven't looked into much, because I have taken it and it did nothing for me back in the day. Turner says, asking about prolactin, anything mainstream in terms of supplements to lower prolactin? Yeah, Schisandra would be a pretty effective chemical for that. It's actually studied for it. There's a paper on hyperprolactinemia in a mouse that was given Schisandra that it reduced prolactin pretty significantly, to the point where they suggested it being used in prolactin secreting tumors. So Schisandra would be one of your best strategies. Otherwise, concentrated B6 in the form of P5P would be pretty useful. That's just vitamin B6's like bioactive form. Otherwise, interestingly, and I don't know if this is a great idea, but if you've got hyperprolactinemia, then you might want to look at low dosing an aromatase inhibitor. I mean, this really all depends on context. If you're on TRT, then this might be useful. Low dosing something like Arimidex, because, you do that and there's no esters. You're taking one of the major stimulating factors to the cells that sit at the pituitary that secrete prolactin, called lactotropes, out of the picture. And that's estradiol. Okay. Estradiol has two ways of increasing prolactin: right at the D2 receptors at the pituitary, and by inhibiting dopamine firing from the arcuate nucleus, which is kind of above stream in the hypothalamus pituitary dynamic. So those would be my suggestions. Otherwise, I mean, you're looking at a script for cabergoline, which is a heavy D2 receptor activator, agonist, if you will. And, it can come with problems if dosed very, very high for too long, like in the Parkinson's realm doses. The doses for hyperprolactinemia are 0.25 to 0.5 milligrams twice a week, and they aren't shown to cause any, cardiac valvulopathy or anything like that. So I think you'd be safe doing that. If you actually have elevated prolactin, a doc will almost definitely prescribe you cabergoline for that, and that should take it down very quickly. It's one of the most effective drugs for it. I mean, period. There are people that have prolactin of 258 when the range is 2 to 20. 258 nanograms per milliliter. Take cabergoline, and it may take some time because that prolactin is pretty elevated, but it'll take it down to 2 nanograms per milliliter. I've seen that happen on blood work before. So that stuff is exceptionally strong. Ishmael, but if you use Vyvanse occasionally for periods of studying and not chronically, the benefit will be greater than the harm. I guess you could say that. Yeah, I mean, the problem with dopaminergic drugs, the hardcore ones that all do the same thing, which is inhibit dopamine reuptake, is that if you take them chronically, you just dysregulate dopamine, and it is probably some sort of desensitization of the receptor sites, but it's also almost definitely a lack of projection of dopamine. Dopamine, neurotransmitters themselves, when there's a lot of them, excess quantity, their origination points will downregulate. That's one of the things you'll see in the studies with SSRIs, is that it actually downregulates the fucking RAF nucleus, which is the part of the brain responsible for projecting serotonin, one of them, right? The whole RAF nucleus gets downregulated in response to SSRI. So not chronically using these dopamine drugs would be better for you, definitely long term. Still not good to use it intermittently, in my opinion, because I think there are better compounds for that. Not the least of which is modafinil is better and just a little less aggressive at inhibiting the reuptake of dopamine than Vyvanse. But, to answer your question, if you're using it very occasionally, I think it's fine. I honestly think it's not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. Then again, man, I know people, I know a guy, let's just say, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy. I know a guy who's like a business kind of friend of mine who has been taking Adderall for 20 years. He also takes 9-MEBC, though, sometimes to try to kind of upregulate dopamine pathways. But even before he started taking 9-MEBC, he felt great all the time. I know another guy, older guy, not a business guy. He's like a family, a friend of my family, who's been taking Adderall for 20, 25 years. Guy has energy all fucking day, and that's it. No side effects, no nothing. So it's different for different people. Dihexa, I like Dihexa. It's a hepatocyte growth factor receptor agonist. So it's essentially stimulating brain growth factors, neurotrophic factors, probably nerve growth factor as well. It's very potent. So if you're looking to do some repair work, Dihexa would be useful. Alternatively, though, and I think easier to get because it kind of comes in a ready to inject solution, would be cerebral lysin. And yeah, I mean, I think cerebral lysin, from my experience, in addition to the studies and the anecdotals, because you got to couple all that when determining, how to give advice on something, is pretty epic. Cerebral lysin is pretty epic. I ran a cycle of that a few months back. I'm running another cycle probably either end of April or beginning of May. I'm excited about it too. I'm going to be running cerebral lysin at 2 milliliters every third day, probably, right? Because I ran 5 milliliters. Was I running 5 milliliters every other day or 5 milliliters every day? I forget. It was a lot. And though it was very potent for kind of upregulating all kinds of functionality in terms of repair, and I was dreaming a lot even during my midday naps. It was really bizarre. I also got a little bit of brain fog, which tends to happen when large scale neurogenesis is happening. And that brain fog wasn't particularly pleasant. So I'll be dosing that, differently. Turner, what's your very best, most every other day, hardcore daily or every other day full on ADHD stack would be extremely potent without any 9-MEBC and bromotain? Hard to say. You'd be looking at 150 of uridine, 75 or so of citicoline, 90 milligrams artichoke extract, 300 milligrams bacopa. I've seen that stack work really well for that case. I'm not sure that uridine, however, is sustainable to take daily because it depletes fucking brain folate. And it may dysregulate dopamine signaling if you're taking it every single day, right? That's why I think you should generally take breaks from these kinds of things. At the same time, though, I mean, everything that the pharmaceutical industry is going to give you is going to dysregulate dopamine as well. So you got to kind of weigh that out. But that honestly be my suggestion. A lot of people, because of dopaminergic issues, the issues are dopamine centered, are going to find they have a great response in terms of that energy and stimulation just taking TRT, just having exogenous hormones in the mix. I mean, that stuff directly upregulates dopamine pathways by increasing tyrosine hydroxylase, which is conversion from tyrosine to L-DOPA, but also modifying receptor sites positively. Eric G, thanks for the answer on prop. I've been on TRT for close to 10 years and having a hard time getting 10 years and you're not dialed in. I was on cream, which was amazing. Bad for libido. Interesting. It's usually the opposite. I ran cream for about a month. Libido was actually pretty good. I was a little overstimmed. I think it was just very rapid increase in testosterone. I don't know how it was converting. I wasn't running labs at the time, which I regret. But, it's difficult, man. I think with TRT, sometimes you got to be taking other things to deal with some of the side effects that may come from a dose that's actually therapeutic. Like I know guys that their hematocrit goes too high on 200 milligrams a week of testosterone. They can't do everyday injections because their libido goes to shit. So they've got to do infrequent injections, and then libido is great, but hematocrit goes too high. So they got to do therapeutic phlebotomies, or take a lot of grapefruit seed extract, or eat a lot of grapefruit, do a lot of cardio, steady state cardio, drink a lot of water, not smoke, not drink alcohol in order to do that. So there's all kinds of things that, you might have to sort of have as ancillaries on top of your TRT protocol in order to dial it in perfectly. The closest I've gotten to not needing anything else on TRT was prop, prop at 175 milligrams a week at 25 milligrams a day. And I still run 5 milligrams tadalafil most days, but I definitely don't think I need it at this point. It just makes things even more crazy. Eric is also saying doc switched him back to test E, but it always gives me bad brain fog. Just realizing it's the ester always happens. Yeah, I mean, that's just common. It's just very, very common. And it's unclear to me whether or not that is just large amounts of oil in the carrier oil, which is known to cause a systemic inflammatory response, which is giving you brain fog, or it's elevated estradiol or too much estradiol at the tissues. It's really difficult. It's really, really difficult. I wish you could make an ester longer while making it much cleaner and not having a fucking carrier oil that could cause systemic inflammation. It's just not good. It's not good. Not sure about this question. Nootropics, not pharmaceutical drugs, safer than pharmaceutical drugs. Some nootropics are pharmaceutical drugs, like aniracetam, oxiracetam, Nupep. These are pharmaceutical drugs. Cerebrolysin, the peptide. So is Nupep, actually. It's a peptide. But they're used in a pharmaceutical setting. So, I mean, in the context of like whether or not they're pharmaceutical, I think they are. 9-MEBC is a pharmaceutical, even though it's classified as a research chemical at this point. Acetyl-L-carnitine is a supplement, right? Not a drug, and does all kinds of really, really cool positive shit that, some drugs can match or some drugs can do, but a lot of drugs can't. Alcar is a very impressive supplement for brain performance. It's actually pretty epic, among other things. I was recently reading a study that acetyl-L-carnitine treatment restored erections in rats that had fibrosis, penile fibrosis. I forget how exactly that it did that or what the mechanism was, but that's pretty impressive. There's just more and more stuff about Alcar. Does really, powerful stuff for people's physiology. Look at this stack. Lacuna 500, teacrine 200, dynamine 100, theobromine 50, uridine 150, citicoline 75. I think that would be fine as well. You just run the risk of overstimulation. Try it and see. I mean, that's a lot of dopamine action going on, but if you need that much dopamine action, you might be fine. Rod Farvo, do nootropics need to be cycled? Cortex and Torque can be taken 6 days a week. I really think everything should be cycled, including Alcar, you know what I mean? Which is so innocuous and so innocent, but yet so effective. I just think you should cycle everything, right? So these stacks were made to take daily. That's why I made them, right? I figured from a business perspective, that would be, am I like shape dyslexic? What is going on? From a business perspective, that would make sense. Because then I wouldn't have to worry about, okay, like you guys have to cycle 3 days on, 4 days off, which was the case with the previous Cortex stack because of the uridine content in it. So these can be taken, they can be taken 7 days a week if you absolutely have to. I mean, look, people are prescribing Adderall, etc., 7 days a week and people are taking it, right? So I just don't suggest, nootropic brain modulation every single day. I don't suggest it. These days, I'm with everything 4 or 5 days on to 2 to 3 days off. I'm almost always taking breaks on the weekends, or if the weekend's a work intensive weekend or if I have a trip or something, then like I'll take the break the following week and just cycle off of everything. I learned to do that because stacks would become ineffective, or there would be some sort of side effect that popped up that I couldn't explain, that I would theorize about, that I couldn't really get to the bottom of because there's no literature on it. You know what I mean? There's no literature like on some of the side effects that modulating certain neurotransmitters can have on you. And so I cycle nootropics regardless. Selegiline, I don't really think I like that stuff. Forget what it does. Ayuba Media says, just started paracetam. The gym high is improved to new dimensions. Absolutely. That stuff is incredible. It's the OG of racetams. It's the most well-studied. It's been around for the longest. And the most, it's like, I think it has the most amount of people that have used it. If you really look at all the anecdotals, more people have used paracetam than anything else. Stuff is awesome, honestly. Jordan Gina with the big super chat. Thank you, brother. Thoughts on supplementing, Bifido. Yeah. Bifido versus baby formula. I hate the taste in dairy. No, see, there's something about the human milk oligosaccharides that make you make your own bifidobacteria that a probiotic of bifidobacteria can't match. And I'm not sure why that is. I mean, I have theories about why that is. Like when you ingest a probiotic, some of your stomach acid might kill some of the bacteria, right? Some bacteria are resistant to stomach acid, but then they get into your small intestine, they get into the colonic environment, and they're battling between other bacteria. Also, though, probiotics are transient. Most of them, with the exception of some specialized strains, don't colonize. Like, so they don't, set up a location in your colon and then start to replicate and build their own thing and fight against gram-negative species. They're in and out. You basically shit them out. And so that's the problem with trying to take probiotics in lieu of something like human milk oligosaccharides, which should, considering that's what your mother gives you as a baby, which catalyzes the production of all your gut species, build more bifidobacteria in a sustainable way that's not transient and allows them to colonize. So yeah, deal with the taste, and if you have sinusitis, you probably should look into your digestion causing that. A good degree of sinus problems are caused by silent reflux or maybe even actual reflux, but digestion being poor. Any degree of the gastric juices, whether they're vapors or acid, doesn't need to be acid, will give you sinus problems. I know that because I have a genetic issue with that from my dad, and I have to really eat cleanly and really focus on my gut as to not have sinus issues. But if I go off the wagon and eat terribly, which I don't anyway because that doesn't make me feel good, then I have sinus issues, and it's due to silent reflux. Super chat autocorrect was going nuts. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, man. I really would, if I were you, just try to deal with it. And then if it was me, because I know how beneficial like the baby formula is, I would just run that and then just do everything I could to mitigate I'd get to the bottom of what was causing the other side effects and try targeting that over 2-3 months with some supplement regimen or something. You got to try to get to the bottom of it. Nope, never. I don't think I've ever heard of that. There's a lot of compounds I haven't gotten into. Sup, brother? Not a whole lot of thoughts on SARMs. Turner, did you know that varicose vein supplements, red grape, vine extract have the same results in meta studies as nitric oxide aminos and Cialis for ED? I did not know that. That is interesting. I would be, I'm a bit apprehensive to believe that would be universally effective as Cialis for erectile issues, because every single thing that is supposed to, or the studies say is effective, comes nowhere close to the effects of tadalafil. Like Panax ginseng is a good example, or even regular ginseng. They help, nowhere near as effective as Cialis. But the studies say they should be, right? There is a disconnect between studies and real life in a lot of cases. Countries I have ancestry from: France and Italy. A little bit of Scottish, maybe a little bit of Irish on my mother's side. But on my mom's side, it's mostly Italians. They're all Italians. And then on my dad's side, they're all French. So I'm kind of in the middle with a little bit of Scottish and a tad bit of Irish. So weird. Maybe that's why my beard, people always ask me about beard genetics. I mean, it's probably that. It's almost definitely that, because I do nothing. It just grows, bro. Dose and duration for Similac if you've got gut issues. This is a baby formula that will give you human milk oligosaccharides, which make you make more bifidobacteria species in your gut. I'd be running it for 2 months, 5 ounces, 5 to 8 ounces a day in a glass, 2 months straight. Any other questions, guys? If you got them, post them, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. You know why, right? Because this is the live.
You got questions? You got questions? Got the questions? Ask away. I'd love to answer them. Right here, live on air.
I guess the eclipse is coming this week. It's where the moon is supposed to encompass a good degree of the sun. My uncle, who was he's like a ufologist. He is very much into extraterrestrials, UAPs, UFOs, etc. I mean, the guy knows everything about everything. Like, he's read every single book by all of the prominent people, like Eric von Donigan, who wrote, I think, Chariots of the Gods, which is a crazy fucking book. Crazy book. He knows everything about everything regarding this stuff and weird stuff. He called me yesterday and he goes, has anything weird been happening? And I go, yeah, we had hail yesterday. Oh, and my car alarm went off. He goes, did you know there was an earthquake in Jersey? There was. Anyway, he goes, the eclipse is coming this week and the moon's going to encompass the sun for 4 minutes. And it may be like somewhat dark or significantly dark in the daytime for 4 minutes. So I'm kind of looking forward to it, bro. I don't think I'm going to get the glasses to look at it. I'm just going to look around and see, is it dark? Is it actually dark? Austin's about to take some Suboxone. Oh, definitely a better mood. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of feels like 9-MEBC a little bit. It's a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. It might be elevating some other neurotransmitters. I dosed 75, I believe, 75 to 100 milligrams every time that I took it. Pretty effective. Definitely a better mood. But you might have side effects from it too. You know, I never did, but people do. So just be careful. Robert D says, I might be able to get dual citizenship with Italy if you have Italian ancestors. My family was talking about it in Easter. Maybe. I do have Italian ancestors. They are all dead, but who knows? Quite possible. Yeah, we got some discussion on the Anunnaki. So apparently the Anunnaki are a species of beings that came down to Earth and saw like very primitive primate human and manipulated our DNA to make us convert to this like very slow-brained, very basic, you know, non-functional, non-neurologically savvy or advanced caveman into what we know today, or a version of it. That's one of the theories on the Anunnaki. But yeah, these people or these beings are in. The weird thing about this kind of shit is, like, if you look at ancient scrolls and if you study the hieroglyphs or the writing that is carved into stone from weird ancient civilizations that lived, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago or some significant time ago, they drew aliens. They drew them. They drew saucers. They drew, you know, alien-looking people. There are literal depictions of grays on these rocks. Like, why? Why? Why were they drawing craft? They were drawing alien craft, carving them on rocks, you know, thousands upon thousands of years ago. There's something to it. I've had experiences with UFOs twice, both in the military. So, I mean, they exist. And, you know, I don't think that is a surprise to anyone. Our world is so strange that I wouldn't be surprised if Charity of the Gods is based on reality. Dude, the rabbit hole goes deep. What's better between 9-MeBC and bromotan? They both do different things. So you have to think about this in a much more nuanced way. Because, like, what are you wanting to do? What's better for what, right? I mean, bromotan is better for an acute stimulation and like an acute good brain performance benefit. While 9-MeBC does produce that too, 9-ABC is a restore compound that you want to run for 20 or 30 days on a cycle and then cycle off and see if it restored dopamine. Whereas bromontane's really not going to do a whole lot of restoration of dopamine. It's more just going to help you synthesize more dopamine, and your body will adjust to stressors in an acute period, and you'll function and feel better. It's a synthetic adaptogen. So they're two very different things. This is somewhat of a good question. Should I stop taking all nootropics while taking 9-MBBC? You know, not necessarily. Like I would say I don't think you have to. But you probably should. Like, you know, if you're running a cycle of 9-MBBC, first of all, you want to make sure that nothing else is interfering with what you're trying to do, that no other compound is giving you effects that you're attributing to 9-MBBC, so you can't even be correct about your theories on what's going on, and that no other compound is going to interfere with at some level. You know, like, I don't know, Cordyceps sinensis, one of the versions of Cordyceps, can modify dopamine D2 receptors. I would not be taking that with 9-MBBC if I was really trying to fix dopamine, because then I wouldn't know what did what, and it may negatively interact with it. I don't know. Probably not, but maybe, right? So yeah, if I were you, if you're running a cycle of 9-MBBC, I wouldn't be taking any nootropics. I usually limit my nootropics when I'm taking 9-MBBC, with the exception of the occasional Alcar use, and that's like really it. Yep, all the ancient cultures had some interesting end statues, bro. Dude, they knew things. I mean, the pyramid alone, I don't know if you guys have looked into this, but like, you know, I mean, and this is not an original argument, by the way. I'm not some smart scholar regarding this, but the way the rocks are crafted and cut and placed upon one another is something that, like, now with advanced engineering technology, we would have a hard time doing. So how the fuck did they do it all the way back then? You know, yeah, sure, they carried it on their backs, like, and just laid it, and it took them 3 years. Nah, I don't think so, bro. I don't think so. You know, how was the inside of the pyramid, like, you know, crafted? It was dark. It was dark the whole time. How do they, there's so many anomalies with the pyramid specifically. And maybe it can be all be explained, but we have no idea. We don't have the answers. But the anomalies are so, like, you can't just, like, let them go. You know, if you study it enough, or even if you watch a lot of Ancient Aliens, the TV show, there's stuff that Giorgio and these guys talk about that you're like, you know, it just really makes you think, dude. Something really weird, bro. And maybe just aliens. I mean, look, if anything, like the ancient people were a lot less formidable or scary to some sort of extraterrestrial civilizations, like or species. If they came down here, they're probably a lot less afraid that, you know, the Incas are going to nuke them. We didn't necessarily have that stuff back then. Whereas now, you know, it's like we see some weird craft that's invading our space, and then, you know, the United States military or the Air Force would probably get involved, and they have before, actually. My uncle, by the way, on this topic is, like, he's very well read, so he reads everybody's books, like every specialist that's out there talking about that, whether they're full of shit or not. Like, he likes to read everything and just try to discern the information correctly. And I mean, he believes all manner of things. Like, you know, his theories sound very sound as well. I don't know what's true versus not because I haven't studied it enough. But my uncle is very much into all of this and puts some pretty good arguments for the existence of extraterrestrials, first of all, but also for the argument of extraterrestrial influence on things like the construction of the pyramid, the major pyramid, you know. And I don't think that's, I think that, like, I can't disagree with him. Like, how did they cut the stone so perfectly? We can't do that with modern stuff. Like, this was however many eons ago, bro. How did they do it? A lot of unknowns, boys. Yeah, he's pretty cool, but I think a good degree of why his mind is so open is a lot of marijuana usage. He's also a pretty heavy pothead, so. And he was in bands for many years, so he's you know, he's that guy. He doesn't really party anymore, but he's also highly intelligent, dude. He's a highly intelligent dude. He just started a YouTube podcast, actually. It's called the Johnny Thomas Podcast, something to that effect. It's very new. He's got like no subs, but you can actually go watch my uncle talk about aliens. Johnny Thomas podcast. Johnny Thomas pod, something to that effect. If you guys got any more questions regarding nootropics or TRT or energy, let me know. I'm on day 9 of my 9 MABC cycle. Feeling great, man. Feeling good. Having some of that extra euphoric, happy energy pop back in, which is usually only present in the first couple days, which I find interesting. It didn't happen to me last time I ran 9 MABC, and this could be related to the fact that I somewhat recently ran a cerebral license cycle. That's my theory at this point. I don't know though. I'm on day 9. I think I'm done on the 17th or 18th of my 20 milligram a day 9 MABC cycle. Yeah. So far, benefits are pretty good as usual. Libido's a little better. Sensation is a little better. My mood is definitely better. But generally, I think if you're in an okay place, 9 MABC serves as maintenance, right? It's just maintenance for dopaminergic neuron projection and conversion factors for turning your precursors into usable dopamine. I really, really like how I feel acutely on 9 MABC and what it does for dopamine long term, right? I'd be surprised if in the next 20 years that drug didn't make a comeback, at least in the scientific literature. It's really, really effective for doing what it needs to do. Highly, highly effective, boys. 9 a.m. in Miami. Well, it's 9:48 here. I think we're in the same time zone. Brother, did you have any uncomfortable symptoms from too much BDNF? It is hard to figure out if that's the case. Yes, when I took cerebral lysin, I took it in pretty high doses, and there were times that I had brain fog. I knew to expect that if the dose was too high, because I've gotten brain fog from neurogenesis inducing agents in the past. So I wasn't really frazzled about it or even bothered by it. I kind of was just like, okay, this is what's happening. That'll pass. And it did. But I mean, I don't think it's also as straightforward as brain-derived neurotrophic factor and neurotrophic factors go and repair stuff. I think they may be doing other things as well that we don't know about, right? So it's not entirely just a linear process of like brain restoration. They could be doing other things that we don't know about. Your brain can respond negatively to one neurotrophic factor or the other for reasons we'll probably never understand. So, I mean, that's kind of it. Generally, though, you're going to find that people that take neurogenic agents in high doses have a degree of brain fog, not for the duration, but at various points or some points in their usage of said compounds. And no one can really explain why. People just think, like Leo has said before on a podcast, that he thinks it's neurogenesis happening in the cofactors that are needed to support neurogenesis. Like, who knows? B vitamins as an example, but probably other compounds may not be in adequate quantity to deal with that neurogenesis. And so as a result, you get brain fog. It might be the case that if you're taking neurogenic stuff or highly, highly reparative stuff, that you might need to be taking, you just might need to double your micronutrient intake. You might just need to take everything, magnesium, like a whole multivitamin, iodine, selenium, manganese, chromium, zinc, all the B's, choline, inositol, every amino acid. Like, we just don't know. What test would you run to see if your carrier oil is causing systemic inflammation? Yeah, probably C-reactive protein. But that might not even be it. Like, I really don't know. If there are other inflammatory markers that you can look at, those as well, but CRP is probably the most well-known and prominent one that you can actually get a blood test for. So I'd probably look at CRP to see. But I think if nothing's elevated, you have to look at how you feel. You know what I mean? If you feel funky this is why this is so hard. You've negated that it is estradiol. So it's not estrogen causing your problems, or it's not some other thing, or it's not just super physiologic tests causing your issues, because that can cause problems for people. Then possibly it's the carrier oil. It's just not out of the realm of possibility that synthetic carrier oils can cause an inflammatory response. Some of them are known to. So it's just one of the many problems with TRT. Like, TRT is not perfect. It's definitely great if you get the right ester and the right setup for you, whatever. But sometimes there are issues. I do think creatine is overrated for cognition, although people that might need extra creatine or benefit from the things that it does might beg to differ. They might have a great experience and be like, hey man, I feel really great. Never really done a whole lot from me. I've never seen it in, I don't have a large sample size of people, few over the years. I've never really seen it do a whole lot, but pretty effective for allowing your muscles to hold some more water and generally for you to look bigger, etc. Most sold product over the years is Cortex, as we've had it for the longest. Torque is actually coming close to outselling Cortex, and Torque's only been around for 2 years. Cortex for 6 prior. Like, so think about how much product that sells. Most sold courses supercharged dopamine. Second to that is Nootropics Ground Zero. Most sold digital product, I believe, is the Racetam God Guide. Either that or Stack List. Those are just nootropic stack guides. Difference between Cortex and Torque is all day energy, lasts longer, mainly focused on dopamine. Cortex is fast onsetting energy, doesn't last as long, somewhat focused on dopamine, mostly focused on the same neurotransmitters caffeine works on. So that's the big difference. Good question. That's somewhat of a common question, so I know it by heart. Should I feel depressed after a day taking bromontane? Not really, but it may have some sort of weird interaction with serotonin, which it can, that is causing you to have this problem. At the same time, I don't know, maybe you've got some dysregulated dopamine pathways as it is, and bromontane is some sort of interacting with that in some sort of negative way. I don't know. I'm just speculating. Hard to say. But no, that generally that's never made me feel depressed. It's not common to feel depressed after taking bromontane. Doesn't mean bromontane didn't cause it, because it might have. You just never know. I'd say it's, you'd want to look at context, meaning what your brain is doing in response to it, or what your state is at baseline in terms of neurotransmitters or other, and then how that might be theoretically interacting with bromontane. Lithium orotate versus St. John's wort for mood benefits. I've taken both, and they were both pretty effective for that. I don't really love SJW because it's a mild serotonin reuptake inhibitor, so I don't love that that's the case. I forget exactly what lithium is doing, but I know it's acting on serotonergic receptors or some similar mechanism. I don't really like taking either of them, honestly. TRT for me is better for my mood than anything I've ever taken, besides the occasional use of probiotics. I don't think psilocybin prescription is like a thing yet. I think it probably will be at some point. But I think we're still in the preliminary stages where it's being studied for depression and things like this, and PTSD. Yeah, that's unfortunate, because I think regulators have to be careful about this. Regulators, whoever determines, right? Because irresponsible people will use psilocybin in an irresponsible fucking way. But responsible people who are trying to in a nuanced fashion and carefully modulate their brain physiology will do it the right way. And they'll microdose 200 milligrams or 100 milligrams 4 days a week. You know what I mean? And they'll never go above that. They're not going to be driving under the influence of a gram of mushrooms and crash their car because they think they see the Lucky Charms guy at the red light. So it's a touchy situation, boys. Touchy situation. Other questions, if you got them, send them. If you got them, send them. So in Berlin, Germany, apparently they're prescribing psilocybin in therapeutic doses. So there you go. I guess it is happening. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me that it's going to happen. In 20 years or something, I think pot in general will be completely legalized, but there's still going to be penalties for driving under the influence of marijuana. It'll be like booze, and hopefully a good degree of people who have problems with alcohol will transition and just smoke pot. It's not great to smoke pot every day. I don't care what your logic is. It's not great. I know what it's doing to your brain and etc. But it's better than booze. It is better than the booze, brothers. Brothers. Hey, brothers. I haven't had a drink in 2 years. Proud of myself. I wasn't an alcoholic, but my dad was, who died from it when I was young. My mom is, and our relationship has just never been great because of it. Of other people in my life, my ex-girlfriend. I quit after leaving her. I'm like, everything I've ever seen related to alcohol sucks so bad, and I just don't give a shit. I was also, pushing 40, and okay, if I drank some wine or some tequila, I felt it for 3 days, man. I finally got to the point where I'm like, why am I even why? For 4 hours of some GABA binding, but ultimately a depletion of magnesium and B vitamins, and modifying liver enzymes probably for a very temporary period. changing blood glucose levels, inducing superficial dopamine release that you're in withdrawal from hours later. What the fuck's the point of that? I just haven't drank in a while. Once you know what it does, you can't in good faith or good conscience drink. You know what I mean? Whatever. I may have a shot of tequila here and there in the future, but I don't care for it. I also have a lot of experience with alcoholics in my life, and I see how they are. You know what I mean? I see even people who don't drink like a whole lot, but they kind of drink regularly. The moment a couple of drinks get into them, there's this like kind of cringy arrogance that comes out that they would never be that confident otherwise. So they're full of shit. And it's just like, you're not fooling it. You're not fooling me. You know what I mean? So that's my take on it. All right, boys, I'm going to end the stream. I got some stuff that I got to take care of. Thank you for the questions. This has been an epic live stream. Content coming Monday and Wednesday and Friday this week. Another live stream later on in the week, probably Thursday evening. So look forward to that. Make sure you're subbed to the channel and get all notifications coming through. There are 2 discounts on both of our nootropic stacks right now, and the codes are in the description of this video. So go buy some product and support us. I am almost booked on 3-month and 6-month packages because I just got an influx of them, which always happens in the spring. But I still have slots open. So if you want to work with me over a long period of time to target something very nuanced, please hire me, livecortex.com. Otherwise, have a great weekend, everybody. Look out for the eclipse on, I think, Tuesday. Don't look at it or get the glasses. And fucking watch out, bro. Because the aliens in ancient Egypt, we had that discussion. So now everything's like, it's all opened up. Brother.